my top 10 favourite first seasons. The first season of any TV show is a very special time, particularly for long-running shows. It's always fascinating to go back and look at the first season and see how different or how similar they are from what came later. Sometimes the first season can be a bit of a stumbler, where everyone involved, both writers and actors, are still trying to figure out what the show is going to be. But sometimes the first season can come straight out of the gate, kicking and screaming, and already demonstrating what kind of a great show this is. There are a lot of first seasons that are among my favourite of the shows, respectively. So I'm going to talk here about my top 10 favourite first seasons of some of my favourite shows. Number 10. Friends. Now, I like Friends. Honestly, season 1 is still one of my favourites. I'd probably put it up in top 3 along with season 2 and season 5. I didn't watch Friends at the time. I didn't see the first season at the time. I think it was on about season 3 here in Australia. That would probably be about 1997. And I kind of accidentally caught some of an episode one night while it was on, and I thought it was really funny, and I started watching it. And inevitably, as I often did, I did the same thing with Babylon 5 pretty much. I then went back and picked up the DVDs or whatever it was. I don't think there were DVDs then, were there? Was it videotape? I think I might have rented the videotapes, actually. I went back and I saw what I'd missed, and I loved season 1. I still think season 1 is one of the best seasons of that show. 9. Doctor Who. Classic Who, obviously. Some people might be surprised to not see this higher on this list, but hey, it's still in the top 10. What do you want? Season 1 of Classic Who, well, again, it's not my favourite of the show or even of the William Hartnell era. It's still a pretty solid beginning to the series. The characters are well established, the mythos is still in its infancy, but all very interesting and appealing, and it's got a tremendous amount of atmosphere and, considering its budget and the time, a tremendous amount of ambition. 8. Fringe season 1. Now, I like Fringe. I'm up and down on certain seasons. Season 4 is probably my overall favourite of the show. My second favourite is probably season 1. Now, some people might question that because, in many ways, season 1 of Fringe, it's considerably lower on the overall kind of the story arc than later seasons. You get something seeded in and it starts to kind of kick in towards the season finale. But there's an awful lot of episodes that are very, very much basically like a more updated version of the X-Files almost. And you know what? I'm kind of fine with that. I'm down with that, dude. In some ways, I kind of prefer a lot of the standalone weird things are happening episodes to some of the story arc ones. Honestly, I think season 4 was probably the exception to that, but I actually do kind of like season 1 more than seasons 2 and 3, and certainly season 5, which is my least favorite. I like season 1 as just a fun, weird sci-fi horror, strange things are happening, we have to solve it show. I like that sort of thing. And I like season 1 of Fringe. 7. That 70s Show season 1. A big fan of That 70s Show. Let's not talk about season 8. And season 1, again, as with Friends, it's a really strong opening season. This is not a show that needed time to find its footing and find out what it was going to be. They knew what it was, what the characters were, what the tone was, straight out of the gate, basically. And season 1 is a really strong and really funny season. And like I said, there's always just something a little bit more special about the first season when everyone is just so young and innocent and nobody really knows whether this thing is going to take off. 6. Buffy the Vampire Slayer Season 1. Now, I know a lot of people don't like Season 1 as much as later seasons. I would agree that Seasons 2 to 5 are better, but I still love Season 1. It's the season I started watching it. It's the season I fell in love with it. I mean, I remember when it started on Channel 7. I think it was on like a Thursday night, and they programmed the first episode. It was on at the same time as News Radio, which I was already a fan of. And I'm like, I don't know what this show is. I didn't think much to the movie. It's probably going to be a lot of crap. So I will tape it, because there's no way I'm missing News Radio. And I watched the first episode, which was basically the first half of the pilot, the following afternoon. And I'm watching it and I'm like, this is actually quite good. You know, the characters are actually quite good. And I was intrigued enough to watch the following week and to keep watching. And I think it was around the time of it was the puppet show, I think, later in season 1. Apparently not a very popular episode. It's popular with me. It's one of my favourite episodes. Still is. And at the time, I remember watching the puppet show on like a Saturday afternoon and just cackling throughout. And I think it was at that point that I realised I'd actually fallen in love with this show and these characters. And I was exceptionally happy that it got such a long run. I'm still very nostalgically fond of season 1, though it is way past time it got a Blu-ray release, because let's face it, looks shit on DVD. 5. Star Trek Deep Space Nine Season 1. This might be another controversial choice, because I know a lot of people didn't like the early seasons and didn't think it took off till later seasons, and they don't really start with the story arc stuff until season 2 at least. I like season 1. I have to be honest, it's probably my second favourite season. I took to DS9 pretty much straight away. I mean, I was always kind of half-hearted on Next Generation. You know, it had some really good episodes, but it also had some really bad episodes, and there was a kind of pompous preachiness to it that never sat well with me. And DS9 just had a different tone to it pretty much straight off the bat. And I really took to the cast and the characters. And yeah, I mean, it's a bit like Fringe in a way, that I have to be honest, I kind of like season 1 for its lack of any kind of real major story arcs. I kind of like the fact that it's more of a traditional Star Trek show, but with this cast and with this slightly darker tone to it. I find it kind of appealing, I have to be honest. Again, another unpopular opinion, I'm sure. 4. Drop the Dead Donkey Season 1. Now, Drop the Dead Donkey, for those of you who don't know, was a British comedy series in the 90s. It was a sort of satirical newsroom comedy satirising, the behaviour of the media, which seems to have only gotten worse in the last 30 years. Although the scripts were obviously written beforehand, they wouldn't shoot until like the day of broadcast, and they'd insert like topical elements into the dialogue on the day, although that aspect did lessen later on as the show went on. But season 1 is still one of my favourite seasons, and I still remember just watching that first episode with my brother. It was on Channel 4. Nobody knew what it was going to be like. And just both of us laughing our asses off at it. It's a classic show. And season 1 is still one of the best in my opinion. 3. House Season 1. Now, I'm a bit mixed on House as a whole, to be honest. I felt that it really kind of jumped the shark after season 3 for me, when they started messing about with the cast and getting more and more soap opera-y instead of, the medical mystery series that it started out as, and which frankly was much more interesting than the turgid soap opera of later years. I was also massively pissed off with what they did to my favourite character in it, probably, which was Cameron. Apparently she's not very popular with some people. Well, I loved Cameron. And I was massively pissed off with what they did with her after season 3, basically keeping her on the show as little more than a glorified extra for 2 seasons, and then writing her off altogether. And I didn't think much to her replacement in 13 as well. I know that's not a popular opinion either. I far preferred Cameron. So after season, I've really only got the first 3 seasons on DVD. I don't really bother after that, I have to be honest. And to be honest, of those 3, I would say season 1 is probably the best, because even season 2 and 3, you're getting some of the soap stuff starting to come in. I really liked season 1. I really liked the format. I liked the characters. I liked the medical mystery over any of the relationship bollocks of later seasons. And I like the ensemble. It's easily my favourite season of House. And for any show, I think it's a great opening season. I just wish I could be more enthusiastic about the show as a whole, because the later seasons really kind of dampened my enthusiasm. 2. Elementary season 1. Now, I have to be honest, as I've said in my TV spotlight on Elementary, I didn't watch this show for a long time, and I didn't much like the sound of it. An American-made and set Sherlock Holmes with a female Watson. Let's say it sounds like complete crap of the highest order, and somehow it's not. Somehow it's actually a great show, one of the best shows of the 2010s. I guess talent actually counts for things these days. Who'd have thought that? And season 1 is a great season. I adore Johnny Lee Miller's Sherlock Holmes. Definitely one of my favourite characters of the last 10, if not 20 years on TV. Brilliant performance, brilliant Holmes. And season 1, again, it's a great mix of just standalone episodes and a slowly developing story arc, kind of revealing Holmes's backstory and leading up to a confrontation with a certain Moriarty. Season 1 is still one of the best seasons. I'm not sure if it's the best season. Season 4 and season 7, I think, are also big favourites. But it's certainly one of the best, and it's a great opening season. But what is number 1? My favourite first season of any TV show ever, I think, is season 1 of The X-Files. Again, I don't know, maybe nostalgia plays a certain part in this. I remember watching this on Channel 10 back in 1994. Yes, I'm that old. And, as with Buffy, slowly but surely going in as a skeptic, going in as a Scully. Is this going to be any good, or is it going to be a lot of crap? And slowly but surely falling in love with it. And as with, stuff like Fringe and DS9, one of the reasons that I love season 1 so much, again, there's not actually that much of the story arc in it. There's a couple of hints of it. The story arc as it is doesn't really start until the season finale. There's so much more standalone stories. And in all honesty, I think the X-Files did standalone stories much better than the story arcs. And that's why I love season 1. And season 1 still has some of the best standalone episodes that still stand up nearly 3 decades later, like Ice and Squeeze and Darkness Falls and Eve and many others I'm sure I could name if I had an episode list handy. But yeah, even though, I do think some of the later seasons and don't necessarily stand up that well. Even season 6, which I used to love, I've been rewatching it lately, and a lot of it's not as good as I remembered it being. Season 1 is still as good as it was nearly 30 years ago. It's my favourite season of The X-Files, and it's my favourite first season of any TV show ever. Thanks for listening. See you next week.